Legends of Tomorrow, Season 3, Episode 3, Zari. Now this episode I would say went full mystic, which is kind of the, kind of the theme for this season, I would certainly say, with Kuasa coming back to life. And, of course, in this episode they introduce another one of the amulets, which I mentioned in the last episode, or I guess in the premiere. That is one of the big things with the amulets. Like, you have the Ashe amulet, which is of course what the Vixen characters use throughout time, and then you have the elemental amulets, and of course Kuasa had one, and hers was the water element. And we do find out in this episode that she can still utilize that element. Like, she wasn't just brought up out of the water. She can actually still utilize the powers of water. And of course everyone thinks that she's a metahuman because of that, but technically it was just that when she died she was using the amulet, and however she was brought back was with her still being able to control that ability, which I thought was cool. It was definitely a way to make her even more dangerous, because you could tell in this episode, especially during the bar sequence when she fought with Sarah, very few people hold her on against Sarah, and she spun her around and launched her across like she had super strength, which she does not, but it was still cool to watch where she just flipped her and she flew like all the way over the bar. So definitely a great fighter, and she has the ability to control water. She can just drop into water. She can move faster than most people walk when she's in her liquid form. So it's definitely cool, very Terminator-esque, which, they make a Terminator reference in this episode. I don't know if that's why they made that reference, was to be like, they make the Terminator reference early and then they're running from someone who can turn into liquid, which in T2 was liquid metal. So maybe that's why they made that reference ultimately, but it's also a super nerdy show. They make a bunch of nerd references. But it was really good. I still really enjoyed this episode. We have Amaya actually focusing on herself and trying to figure out her main issue with using the amulet, and she's able to, thanks actually to the help of Nate and Gideon, she drinks this tea, and she's able to go through basically like this psychic hallucination that puts her in between worlds, and she's able to communicate with former Vixens that allow her to, kind of help her figure out what the problem is, with the amulet. And ultimately by the end she's able to completely control it, and I thought that was very cool. And she actually ends up going up against her own granddaughter, which of course Kuasa is like, I could kill you, and she pulls out a stone, which I thought was interesting. She like just uses, I guess it's a teleporting stone or something, transporter stone. She was like, I could kill you, but then I'd just be killing myself, and it's just like, I'll leave you with that one. And then she takes off and is like, that's gonna F with somebody's head. But she didn't seem to like really be super affected by it. But she definitely, Amaya definitely decides to kind of stick with the team in this episode, which I thought was cool, because I wasn't sure how things were going to play out with her character, especially with just how things are going this season. But it was super cool that she decided to stay, and mostly that reason was because of our new character, Zari. And I'm excited to see how that plays out. I know we do actually have more characters coming into the show, so I'm kind of excited to see that transition, because normally it's just like, alright, characters, new season picks up. Granted, it's only season 3, so it's not like this is their recurring thing. But typically, like season 2 kicked in, it was like, boom, these are all the new characters. Like, they might show up here and there. This one character in Amaya is actually going to be joining, and that was pretty much it. It was like just seeing the characters, they all pop up at one time, and then that's pretty much all there is to it. This time it's a bit of a slower progression. I think that's actually very cool, because you won't always just meet the new characters instantly. So I actually like the way they're doing it, where we have this character come in who I didn't know was coming in. I know there's a male character that's going to come in as like one of the new legitimate heroes. So I don't know if Zari is staying as a part of the team or how that's going to play out with her. But they end up in, I think it was 2042, Seattle. We find out that Argus is, for whatever reason, like this evil corporation in the future. So I think that'll be touched on. They talk about it a lot in this episode, but considering who they're going to be dealing with this season as far as like villains, I don't think they're going to have a lot of time to go back to that. They probably will. It's hard to say, but I'm like, I don't know. They're dealing with like a lot of mystical stuff. We got like 2 other villains coming into play, both of which are very different, but both very dangerous. I don't know if they're going to have time. Granted, who knows how many episodes we're getting, so hour-long episodes just about. I'm sure they'll have time if they they decide to devote 1 episode to it and they solve it all in that time. I'm like, that's Argus. That's a big thing. I would assume worldwide. It could just be in that city, but it's like, I don't know. I just don't know. I'm very curious how that's supposed to ultimately work out for them. But I thought it was a really good episode. I like what they seemingly introduced, like I said, with the Argus thing. I think that will come back. I would assume at some point this season it will. I don't think it'll be like, oh, they talked so much about how Argus took over and they're going to work on that, and then it doesn't come back at all this season. I think it'll definitely come back this season, but I feel like that could be almost a story in itself. Maybe not an entire season because they, of course, it's Argus, so it's not like a mystical thing and an immortal or anything like that. So it's like it's a company, it's a military company. They can do that. They wouldn't really need to jump through time. Just jump to when it first happened, stop it, and it's like surprise, it's over. So of course that won't be like a whole season thing, but I feel like that can at least be 2 episodes. I feel like that could be a good arc, especially with it being Argus and some of the connections they have, where it's like, oh, this is Argus now versus what it's supposed to be in like the present day timeline for like Arrow and Flash and stuff. So I think it would be cool because it didn't really touch on that, and I guess they don't know at this point. They've been jumping around time, but they have been living in modern day. So I would assume that they do know who is leading Argus, which is Diggle's wife. For those of you who might not watch Arrow, they know the guy whose wife runs Argus at this point. So it's like, I don't know if that's going to really come into play, or if they really do or do not know that, which I would assume they would, because they spent a giant chunk of time not jumping around. So I would imagine they spent some time with their families. Maybe, maybe not, because there's like nothing with Sarah ever having been in Arrow or anything like that. But it's time jumping, and they got a whole bunch of. It's hard to keep up with that sometimes, I guess. So it doesn't kind of fit in line all the time when they do that sort of thing. But I'm curious for the Argus stuff to come back. This episode itself, introducing a new character, introducing another one of the elemental amulets, I thought was great. And I'm excited to see where they take that. Like, Zari decides to join the team by the end of the episode because Amaya's like, hey, that totem that you have, like, mine is, it's in the same sort of family a little bit. Like, this mystical stuff all comes from the same place. Like, I can help you, and we can figure out, like, basically our destinies together. Like, I don't know if I'm supposed to go back to 1942 or, go back to Zambezi. And, at some point, I would assume she will. But we just don't really know how things are supposed to play out for her. So it's very interesting that is why Maya stayed, is because another amulet came into play. And, of course, it's going to lead to more confrontations with her own granddaughter, which she might not know necessarily, but she's not dumb. She may or may not have already picked up on that when she's like, Kuasa's like, I could kill you, but I'd just be killing myself. So I don't know how in the world that's going to play out, but that was cool. I like that storyline. Of course, it led to some hilarious stuff with Nate. Like, Amaya was like legitimately going through her stuff, and then Nate was just on drugs. Like, he was just hallucinating. It's like, hey, we broke, it was crazy prison break and everything. We need you to come pick us up. And he's like, okay, I can do that. And he's freaking out, walking down the hallway and stuff. And that was just super funny. So I love that whole sequence of him being high. Pretty much once he got high, like he was that way throughout like the entire episode, pretty much until the end. So tons of funny stuff. And with the dialogue, freaking out, like the ship was moving like crazy, and Gideon's like, actually we're idling, and they show like a bird outside like fly past the ship and everything. So super funny. When he was with Jax and Sarah, and he was like, I was doing this to help Amaya. It's like, it's fine when people do all the time, and he froze, or like he stopped in the middle because he thought something was behind him. That cracked me up. So like him the whole time was just super silly, and just all the situations he was going through. Like Sarah was making commands like, are you guys gonna do this? And he gets them, and she's like, not you. Like, you sit down. And him just being there during the whole trip, and Stein trying to get him to join his side, like, tell Sarah not to basically play chicken with these time ships. And he's like, I don't like broccoli and stuff. And he was just out of his freaking mind the whole time. And it was just really funny. So I loved everything they did with Nate, because it was just, it's like he was drunk last time, he was on drugs this time. Who knows what the world holds for him next. But definitely funny. So I really, really enjoyed that. Sarah in this episode I thought was interesting. At first everything was kind of normal. They were going through their mission. They find Zari, and it's like, all right, we don't know what's going on. Like, the anachronism would be Kuasa, killing her off. So it's like, all right, we'll bring her to the time ship. She tricks them, and it's like, we're going to go in for my brother. Ends up being that she went to get the amulet that used to belong to her brother. She finds out basically all of her people are dead. She fights with Kuasa and realizes, I can't beat this woman. So, she goes through like this whole process. And as all of this is starting to fall apart, like when she's with Ray and the team is trying to get to them and stuff, it's just a disaster with Sarah, where she's like I don't know if I was 100% on this. I was like, she was, I don't know, it was hard to say, because she was really willing to risk it, based off of, her ideas. And of course it worked, because otherwise most of the main characters would have been killed off in this episode. But it was just like, I don't know if I was 100% on her side. Like, I mean, it's just because it's television, of course that would work. And it makes sense, especially with the character she went against. all odds seemed to work in that way. But it was just like, man, she was definitely willing to risk it. And I was like, I don't know if I'm 100% on her side, but at the same time, it's kind of like, it was like this weird in between where it's like, it is Sarah, so I kind of trust her. And as crazy as it was, they've done crazier things. All their time travel crap, they're always screwing something up. Like that was the point of the last episode, is that they're always screwing up. So for her to have like this just like upfront bold challenge, it was kind of weird in a sense, but at the same time, it was like, it works, but it was just weird. I was like, I don't know if I'm 100% on the side just with the way it played out. It's kind of weird because I'm like, I know this is going to work because it's a TV thing, but of course, technically the character herself, she didn't really know it would work. She just assumed. So it was like that weird in between. It was like, I totally get what she's doing. I just don't know if I'm 100% behind it, because it would kill everyone where everyone would have been dead. So it's just kind of funny, but definitely enjoyed the episode. I feel like ultimately it was simple. It was like they just had a couple cool action sequences. They introduced the amulet, they introduced Zari, and then Amaya stays and she convinces Zari to come along. It was kind of like, okay, this is, it was a good episode in itself, but I felt like this episode really was like the true build up for the rest of the season, where it's like, we have Amaya not only regaining control over the amulet, she interacts with her granddaughter, who is officially now, coming in. She was, full on T-1000 Liquid Terminator in this episode. And then, Zari comes in with another mystical amulet. And this is the first time this showed up. This wasn't in Vixen or anything. It was just, talked about. And so it's like, okay, this is really cool. So this is really, really building up the mystical elements of the characters. And it's just like, okay, I like that. And like I said, this episode itself was kind of, by the numbers for them a little bit. Definitely some random issues here and there. We get to see Gary again, and I don't know why he's in the field. He just doesn't seem to be capable. But he is, and he gets captured, like from the beginning of the episode, he gets captured because Sarah's able to pick up his distress call, and they're the ones that find him, and it's like, all right, you're with us. And of course, he betrays them, and that's how, the Time Bureau comes in anyway. So it was just kind of funny. Also, I don't know if this was on purpose, but when they had the Time Bureau come in and they show like the Wave Rider and then they show the Time Bureau ship, I was like, that ship makes me think of Battlestar Galactica. Like the way it looked with the curves on the side, it just had like a longer middle piece. I was like, this makes me think of like the Battlestar Galactica ships. And it's a super nerdy thing, but that's what I thought of. I was like, I just, you shorten the snout basically of the ship and keep the curves, maybe add a little in there because there were like spaces in between. It was like, that would kind of be it. Like just a little bit. Another big thing that was kind of weird with this episode, this isn't like a possible reference because that may have been what that was with the ship, but Ray knew who Kuasa was, or he should, but the way they did it in the episode, it didn't seem like he knew, because he does reference early on, it was like, oh, I dealt with a woman who could control water once, and it was her. Like, that's who he was talking about when he referenced it. It's actually, Kuasa from Vixen Season 2, because he was in there. And so I was like, okay, so he doesn't know that it's her, because that was, it was just like, oh, is this woman who could turn into water? And it was like, oh, I knew a woman who could control it. She couldn't turn into water either in Vixen, so it really was different. She could only control it because of the amulet, just like Mari can only control wind. It was exactly like that. And like I said, it's whatever's going on with the resurrection deal, that's what's giving her that power, because she couldn't turn it into water. She could only control it. At least from what I recall, she couldn't like turn it. It's a lot like the amulet that Maya has. Like, she can control the animal Ashe, but she can't actually turn into those animals. She just gains their abilities. So it was cool. I was like, oh, so when they like interact with her, he's gonna be like, oh crap, that is, this is like, modern day Vixen's supposedly dead sister come back to life and now jumping through time. And they didn't have that, and I was a little disappointed because I was like, I'm pretty sure that's who he was referencing. And I went and I double checked just to make sure, and I was like, yeah, he did have an interaction with her, and it was during the end of the season. Like, he was there, and he was probably knocked out or something, because it, of course, always comes down to like the main character and who they're closest to. So it ended up coming down like Vixen and her sister fighting the main villain for season 2, but he was there. Like, they fought a little bit because she was the villain of season 2, and like weird anti-hero sort of deal in season 2, but it was like he just didn't remember. And I like the article that I read, it was supposed to be like, he's gonna say things like, this is who she used to be, and talking with Amaya like, hey, she's not 100% bad. When I was with her, it was just like the circumstances, and none of that happened. And I was like, he should see her. And I mean, I think she had long hair, so that was really it. So I don't know if they'll bring that up where it's like, oh, I didn't recognize that it was you because of the long hair or anything, or how in the world that's supposed to play out. But I was like, that is so weird because they even have him reference it, which was him in Vixen season 2, and then when they actually meet, he doesn't say anything like, oh crap, like it's you, and like Zari's like, who? And it's like, this is the woman I was talking about or whatever, and I felt like that was, personally, because I knew that he interacted with her in Vixen, I was really disappointed in that. I was like, oh, that actually kind of sucks. And I assume that that's supposed to change based on the article I read, which was before the season even started. So I'm hoping that that does end up changing, but there's really no explanation for it in this episode because he never actually says anything like, when they fight, like when she officially shows up like at the bar and stuff, it's not like, that's when it was supposed to happen where like he turned around and be like, oh, like that's Mari's sister, like Mari McCabe's sister, who's supposed to be dead. And none of that happened. And I was just like, that's really odd. They had him reference his time in Vixen with her, like with the woman that who's been coming after them the whole episode. Yet there was like zero dialogue actually supporting it when they officially met. Like, oh, I remember when you died. You should be dead. And also, even if you're resurrected, how are you jumping through time? That, like, none of that came up, and I was like super disappointed. I was so upset. Like, oh, was like the whole point of having like this crazy big tie-in with the animated Vixen thing. And the first time they have like characters who've actually met from the Vixen cartoon, they don't have them actually say anything like, oh, I remember you too. None of that happened. They just fought, and that was it. And she like, did the water thing and was trying to drown him and stuff. I was like, there should be some dialogue here and like some crazy revelations where it's like, oh crap, this woman is not just some random metahuman, Terminator. This is a woman who I know is supposed to be dead and has now come back to life. And I was just so confused. I was like, I don't understand how, they aren't tying it in, right off the top. So I'm assuming that that's supposed to happen in future episodes. But it's going to be weird now if they do have Ray say something in a future episode and then it's like, why didn't he say that before? And maybe they could say like there's some weird time anachronism that made him forget or something random like that. It could. I would love it. If they actually did this, that would blow my mind. But if they tied it into the next episode where Ray's supposed to be dead and that's why he didn't remember, that would actually be insane. It would be crazy to have that sort of moment and then be like, this is why that happened, and have that saved into the next episode. That would be nuts. But if they did that, I'd be like, wow, that's actually insanely genius. It's just, at this point, I have to assume that's not going to happen. In this episode, it was disappointing, so I do have to say that. But we'll see if they like blow my mind in the next episode, like, oh, he's forgetting stuff, and it's like, oh, you can tie it to that, this crazy thing where he, was killed in his past, and it's starting to catch up, so he doesn't have certain memories. It's like, oh, that's cool. If they happen to do that, I personally don't think they will, but who knows? That would actually be an amazing thing to do. Like I said, if they did that, it would be nuts. But we'll see in the next episode. Also, I don't know if they're gonna do it, but I'm pretty sure that the thing that Ray saw when he was a kid in the tunnel was a white Martian. I'm pretty sure because they have a clip where this random creature is like screaming at Sarah, and I'm pretty sure that was a white Martian. And I don't know if that means we'll get to see Kara show up. We'll get like a cool little Supergirl cameo moment. Technically, they jump through time, not dimensions, so we'll see how that plays out. But I thought that was really cool. I was like, oh man, they have a white Martian in there. Maybe we'll get to see Supergirl show up for like half a second, or they at least reference like National City or reference Supergirl, like, oh man, white Martians and stuff like that. So I don't know. That might not happen. I think it'll be very cool. It'd be a nice surprise if they actually did somehow cross dimensions. It was like, hey, Kara, we kind of need your help because white Martians are insanely strong. We can use your help even as a team. Sometimes you can just use like a Kryptonian or just someone on that strength level, and that'll just be sweet. I doubt they'll do that, but I would really love it if Supergirl made like a surprise little cameo next week to help them fight against a white Martian. Or if they have Martian Manhunter come in, John Jones, he's in Supergirl too. That's not a spoiler. He's been in there since the first episode. It's not a spoiler, but it should be cool. We'll see what they're gonna do no matter what. I'm looking forward to it, and like I said, can't wait to see how they continue to build up this season with the sort of mystical elements. And they're doing what they did last season, where it's like 3 main villains, and so far we only have one. But there's supposed to be 2 other main villains, and then there's technically Malice, who's like a 4th, like the big bad main villain. But there are 3 other villains that we're familiar with. Well, Kuasa is the newest one, but there are 2 other people coming back. I mentioned one being Damien Dark is supposed to show up in this season, but then there's another one that I didn't know was supposed to be one of the main villains, and that should be interesting. I don't know how that's going to play out, but it should be cool to see what they do with these characters and where they decide to pick them up, within time. So I'm looking forward to this season for sure. I think it was definitely a great episode, officially, kicking things off, full mystic, more totems and more mystical characters who are aware of it. Some characters not so aware of how to use their mystical elements, and some characters regaining their mystical strength. So I'm definitely looking forward to the rest of this season. Of course, I would love to know what you guys thought about this episode, so please comment below. Let me know your favorite parts about it, your least favorite parts about it, and I definitely want to know what you guys want to see from the mystical side of Legends of Tomorrow. Now, they've kind of touched on magic in the Arrowverse, particularly with Arrow itself, because of Damien Dark, which is like some people's least favorite season of the show, oddly enough. But they brought it in, and that was when it was like, oh man, magic is being introduced. And there wasn't too much magic really involved. And then, of course, we had Vixen on CW which, with Arrow, nobody really liked it. With Vixen, nobody really saw it. So I think this might, oddly enough, with it being Legends of Tomorrow, I don't know how popular the Legends show is compared to the other ones, but I really like it. I think it's gotten better, every season. So this might finally be the moment where it's like, not only do a lot of people get to see the magic, but a lot of people, I think, will enjoy it, because so far it's been pretty cool. But I would love to know what you guys want to see from the mystical side of things, whether you just have theories, like if you aren't big into comics, just what you guys have theories on, or just what you want to see. And if you are into comics, what characters you guys would like to see, what elements of magic within the DC universe you guys would like to see show up. Like everyone, I'm just going to throw out Constantine. When he showed up in Arrow, that was the coolest thing ever. And I was hoping, even in season 2 of Legends of Tomorrow, they would just have Constantine come on as a main character. So maybe he'll show up again. They're doing Mystic. You gotta have Constantine if you're doing magic. It's not crazy demons and devils and dark magic, but it's magic, and he still knows. Even if it's like the lighter side of magic, Constantine knows it. He just typically ends up involved in like the worst side of magic every time. But I would love to see Constantine show up. That would be absolutely amazing. Plus, they have the animated Constantine show coming up. It just makes sense to be like, hey, Constantine is here. Check out the new Constantine cartoon on CW, which I think starts next year. I don't remember. I talked about that before too, but can't really remember. But either way, we'll love to know what you guys want to see from the Mystic side of this season, and of course, what you guys thought about this episode in general. So please comment below, let me know, and thanks for watching.